After graduation, many students will eventually end up working in supervision or management positions. I hear from many students and alumni who feel unprepared for these kinds of roles. What I often tell these students is that MSW curriculum does provide you with some of the basic human behavior and communication skills that can serve as a foundation for your supervisor skill set. Motivational interviewing, or MI, is one of those transferable social work skill sets. MI was developed by Dr. Miller in the 1980s to support people working with alcohol issues, and it's been adapted to address many issues and used in many settings. The use of MI skills in supervision has recently become a topic of interest in some academic journals and also in the larger MI community. Many supervisors have found that the MI spirit and skills can be effective in supporting staff members. Now, the basic foundation for MI is the MI spirit, CAPE. Compassion is setting aside your agenda in order to put the best interests of the other person first, with an intention to really help the other person. Acceptance is seeking to accept the other person's perspectives and ideas about an issue, especially when they may be radically different from your own. The spirit of acceptance requires that we suspend judgment of the other person and that we actively seek to provide that person with autonomy. Partnership reminds us to seek collaboration with the other person. We aim to share power with the person when able. Finally, evocation. This is the stance that it's important to try to elicit existing ideas, motivations, strengths, and other things from the other person instead of installing new information or trying to educate the person. Another important part of MI is the MI skills, OARS. Open-ended questions are questions that offer the opportunity for others to respond in many ways, not just with a yes or a no. And then affirmations. These are statements that accentuate the positive. Affirmations acknowledge a person's strengths, efforts, and characteristics. And then reflections. Reflections are statements intended to mirror the meaning of what another person has said, and reflections can be complex or they can be simple. Summaries are longer reflections that draw together content from several statements made by the other person. Now that we've covered some of the MI basics, let's see how they might apply to a challenging supervision conversation. For this example, let's say that you need to give your staff member, let's say Jim, corrective coaching. Jim has recently provided his personal phone number to a client, and this is against agency policy. So to prepare for this conversation, you might first try to center yourself in a mindset of compassion before the conversation begins. And then you might start the conversation by clarifying your intentions, saying, Jim, we really need to talk about the fact that you've been sharing your personal number with clients. I want to better understand the whole thing from you first. Upon hearing Jim's perspective, it's really important that we resist the righting reflex. That is, do not give in the temptation to tell Jim how he is wrong or go into a lecture about appropriate boundaries prematurely. Instead, you might ask an open-ended question like, could you tell me your thoughts on this? After Jim gives his perspective, you might use a few reflections to be sure you understand Jim's behaviors and intentions. Reflections show that you are listening, and they also help Jim clarify and organize his own thoughts. At some point in the conversation, you might ask Jim, would it be okay if I added my perspective on this as well? And assuming that Jim gives you consent, you could add, as you know, the agency's policy states that we cannot give personal phone numbers to clients. But I think it's important to understand the reason why we don't do this. It's important to me that my staff practice good self-care, and I also know that these kind of boundaries play a really big role in maintaining strong therapeutic relationships. I think that not sharing your personal phone number is a key part of both self-care and also maintaining those boundaries with clients. Finally, you might ask Jim for his thoughts on what you just said. This is a strategy in motivational interviewing that is often termed elicit, provide, elicit, or EPE. While the example I used today focused on how we might use MI to address a problem behavior, the person-centered approach of MI is also well-suited to help highlight staff strengths and staff development. Just like any skill, MI takes practice, so don't get too frustrated if your initial attempts to apply these concepts don't go as expected. MI is like juggling. It's simple but not easy. There are many resources to support your learning of MI and how to apply MI to supervision. The Motivational Interviewing Network of Trainers, or MINT website, has a global listing of MINT-trained MI trainers, as well as many other MI resources. You can also visit my website at intrinsicchange.com. I have an MI blog, training materials, and videos of using MI in a variety of scenarios.